Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is our third week of class, and we are back on campus. So,
Sorry about that.
welcome to campus, especially if this is your first time here. I know that that are in the classroom here physically with me. You guys have been here before, so you know where to go and have seen me in person, so you're not too shocked. You know, a lot of people get shocked because it's like, oh my God, he's got really long hair. You know, it's like, yeah, that happened during the pandemic. I stopped visiting barbers, basically. I have an auxiliary reason for doing it as well. But honestly, what we're here to do is kind of work through our Unit 1 exercises today in a real holistic fashion. So in other words, we're going to do the You Do It exercises. We're going to do the chapter exercises as far as we can get. I'm going to show you the process of turning in homework, zipping your files, and all of that. You know, and to also kind of work around a couple of other really basic issues, which I think are important, that sometimes as you're kind of starting out working in IT, especially if you guys are like brand new to Gateway and IT programs, I think there's some really important little pieces that we have to start with. And it's not writing code, right? I think probably arguably the most important IT skill that you can garner for yourself, more important than any other IT skill, is to know how to manage your files. Right? So that sounds really silly, right? Because a lot of you will be like, geez, really? You're going to tell me how to like make folders and stuff? Yeah, I'm going to exactly do that, because I think what's happened in the modern age of computing is this. In the modern age of computing, our computers have kind of dumbed down the interface of the operating system and kind of take control of like where you're putting stuff. So if you like bring up Microsoft Word and you go to hit save as, it's going to put it where it wants to put it, right? And that might be where you want it, but it might not. Knowing where your files are located becomes really important. Maybe not so much when you're typing a document, but it becomes really important when you're doing coding work, because you need to know the file and folder structure. You need to know where things are located on your hard drive or your cloud drive or wherever you're putting stuff. And it should be organized in a way that, you know, if you kind of forget, you know where to go and how to find it because of the logic of what you've created. Okay, so my typical example for file management is, for most of us, when we're using a Windows-based computer, we tend to store our stuff in the documents folder. That tends to be the go-to location. So that's what I'm going to do. And normally what I do in here is I will create a folder called Gateway. Right, and I know I've mentioned this in the previous weeks, so I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but for a lot of people, it's in one ear, out the other, and they're like, yeah, whatever, dude, and move on, right? And I really want to stress to you that I think it becomes super important to do that. Once you get inside there, then you might want to make a folder, either for maybe the semester of school you're in, if you have a bunch of classes, or you just name a folder, whatever the class is, you know? And so, for example, for this class, I might name it Java 1, right? And then everything I do for this class is going to go in that folder. And I know where to look. Why? Because I have a Gateway folder and I have a Java 1 folder. And then if you name your other folders that you put inside here correctly, and Eclipse will help you do that, by the way, then you can find your work really easily. If you like entitle your homework, let's say like you're working with Eclipse and you're creating a project folder, and you know, the homework is for chapter 2, it might make sense to call the folder chapter 2, you know, not, you know, homework from February. You know, chapter 2 is a lot more descriptive and specific, and that I think really helps quite a bit when you're hunting and pecking and looking for things later on. You know, like you'll get in a panic and go, oh my God, I didn't turn that in, where is it? Oh my God, where's the zip file? And you're like, I don't know where my file system put it, you know, and you get into this like mode, and I don't want you to be there. So if you're preemptive up front, you start organizing, you start thinking about where you're putting your stuff, it makes a lot of sense. For me, even though I've suggested this approach, documents, Gateway, Java 1 folder, I use my Google Drive. So I have like an installed version of Google Drive that's an enterprise level piece of software that gives me another drive letter on my computer and creates this folder. And see, I use a little bit different approach. So I teach so many different courses over the years that I order them by course number. Makes sense to me, not to you maybe. And then you'll see that I will have a Java 1 folder down here. And then I create another folder for every semester that I teach it. So really, my work for this semester from this class will go into my 2022 spring folder. And then every time I create a new project inside of Eclipse, which is going to be our primary tool, Eclipse, when you name your project, will create a folder inside of here with the name of that project, and all the project assets go into that folder. But I know exactly where that stuff is. So for me, naming it 2022 spring, that's really useful for me, because there are semesters, well, frankly, sometimes I have semesters, and this is true for Python last semester, where I had a daytime section of Python and a nighttime section of Python. And so I named my folders accordingly. So it was like 2021 fall, daytime, 2021 fall, nighttime. And for me, that works. That might not be the exact paradigm that you use, but try to be descriptive when you create folders and file names. Remember that there's some situations where you want to name things a certain way, but for the most part in the Windows environment, you can put spaces and punctuation into your file and folder names too. It's not always a good idea for a program name, but in terms of folder organization, it's absolutely fine. And the thing is, use a system that makes sense to you, because if it doesn't make sense to you, it's not going to help you any, right? So get organized with your files. I think that's a really critical thing, right? So that's my mindset. I know that all my stuff is going into that folder, right? You guys will see me do this every week. For anybody using any sort of cloud-based service that's installed like this, I'm thinking Dropbox, OneDrive, Box, that's another one, right? Google Drive, and there's a bunch of others, where you get a piece installed on your hard drive, and then you have a cloud drive that matches it. The weird thing about the Google Drive that I'm using, because it's an enterprise tool, none of my files store on my hard drive. None of the stuff that I'm doing is getting stored here at all. It all goes back out to the cloud. So my local drive is in the cloud, and my remote drive is in the, it almost doesn't make sense. But when I use a tool like Dropbox, and you can see I also have the Creative Cloud from Adobe and a personal OneDrive account, those services all create a folder on my computer that's actually there that I can use when I'm not connected to the internet. And then whenever I'm connected to the internet, anything I've done in that folder replicates to the cloud, and then any other device that I sign into that account pulls the same files down. So in principle, if I was using, let's say, my Dropbox, I could drop a file in here on my laptop, save it, and then my desktop at home, which is also connected to the same account, a few minutes later will have it because it uploaded to the cloud and it downloaded it back to that machine. So it kind of creates like multiple backups. But here's a kind of the word of advice, folks. The modern age of computing is moving into the cloud. Anybody that works on professional development work that wants to make absolutely sure they don't lose their work, all their source files are in the cloud. Because what happens if I only save on this laptop, and tonight when I leave campus here, I get mugged in the parking lot and somebody takes my laptop, and that's where all my work is. That's not a scenario you want to be in, right? For a lot of different reasons. It is also a reason, and I see that a lot of you have brought your laptops here in class, that some people also think about, do I really need to bring that to school? So now I recommend that you do, because I think it's better to work on your own stuff, because you know where everything is, right? And if you save something on the school machines, it will not retain. So you're not going to come back next week and that machine's going to have your files back, right? So you have to make sure at the end of class, whatever you create here, that you email it to yourself, you zip it, or whatever you do, maybe put it in your Google Drive so you can get to it later. And we'll talk about that when we get there. But that's the file management aspect of this. And I think that's a really pretty critical piece. Now, the next thing that I'm going to do is I am going to jump into the book directly, and I'm trying to remember where I have the link for it. I have it in the resources page. And at this point in time, you can probably follow along this week still maybe without a book, and that's kind of like really kind of pensive. But going forward, if you guys don't have a book, you're in trouble. Yeah, right, because you're waiting. Oh, yeah, because you have a loose leaf. I know, and you know what, Brock? It's not a thin book either. It's like 3 inches thick or something, right?
I know. I was thinking like one might need this. I might use this again at some point. So I was like, hey, you know.
Not a bad idea.
I have a book to use. But now,
Can I give you a comment on that though? There is, in my mind, it took me a long time to really fully convert over to ebooks, and really adopt them like I'm doing now. And part of it is because I don't want to put them in my backpack and lug them around, but then I have an office, whatever. But there's something about also having a physical book, because if you don't have two screens and you can look at your book and then look at your screen, I mean, you're kind of dual screening, right? And for whatever reason, some people have a hard time reading from the screen. So that could be you, right? My wife, if it's Facebook, she can read it from the screen. If it's a book, she's like, man, my eyes are going cross-eyed. And I'm like, yeah, because you're always holding the phone like this far from your face, and your focus is locked into like 12 to 18 inches away from your face. And this happens with IT people. And you'll notice this with people that work in IT, and I'm kind of a rare exception, actually. I think Christopher is a rare exception too, that don't wear glasses. Because what happens is we lock our face into the screen this far away, we never change our focus. Both my screens, or all three of my screens, whatever, are all this far away from my face. But every time I look up and I look at the far screen or down the hall or out to the horizon in the real world, that allows my eyes to exercise. And a lot of problems that IT people have, the sedentary lifestyle, sitting in a chair isn't good. Locking your eyes on a certain focus level isn't good. But you can work around those things, Another aspect of it, real frankly, is how you eat and how you treat yourself. If you're always eating like, junk food and soda or whatever, okay, that's great when you're young, your body can handle it. But I'm going to tell you, when you get older, it doesn't. Your body starts to break down. And if you can eat quality foods and hydrate well and drink quality liquids and all that kind of stuff, it really makes a difference in your life in the long term. So I always encourage you guys, eat well and treat yourself well, and your body will last a little bit longer. I mean, eventually it'll break down anyways, but maybe you can spare yourself the hassle of getting glasses or contacts or whatever. A lot of times when you go to see like eye doctors and stuff, they'll try to convince you to get glasses just because there's profit in glasses, not because you necessarily need them.
What are your thoughts on the blue light filter glasses?
I know that they help some people, right? So Brock asked, what's my opinion on blue light filtering glasses? The reality now, Brock, is that most of our high-end monitors and better systems with better graphic cards tend to have that capability built right into the operating system or device, so you can just do it on the device and you don't have to bother with the glasses. I do know some people that totally swear by them, though, at the same time. I kind of got to the point myself where my doctor was saying, yeah, you need glasses. And I'm like, well, how bad do I really need it? I said, well, we have a really, really slight prescription. I'm like, well, you could just use reading glasses, or you could just try going without, because once you go glasses, you're never going back. I'm like, that doesn't sound good to me. Plus, I don't think I look good in glasses, so, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But, thankfully, my eyes are good, not on simulated blood. All right. I am now in the textbook here, and what I'm going to do is I am going to backtrack here in the book to where we had our first You Do It exercise, and not necessarily to completely redo it, but I just want to go through that process again of showing you the system here. And I'm looking for that first You Do It, so I apologize that I'm fumbling through it. All right. Does anybody have a page number for me for that first You Do It?
Page 20.
Thank you, sir. Let's see if does this look about right, Matt? Or do I have to go back a page?
Just go forward a page.
Thank you. All right, so it looks like my page 21 is your page 20.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so now I am going to repeat this process here, and because I'm just going to say this up front, because I've already done this, I am going to name it differently on purpose. So I'm going to say hello to or something like that. The whole point is really kind of to look at the anatomy of a program and to follow along. And you'll notice here, as we do this, you do it exercise, the author does a really nice job of coaching you through it, right? And start a text editor, open a new document, type the class header as follows. Now, if I would give you the same instruction for step one, I would consider probably more than one step, I would say start your IDE, which is going to be Eclipse, create a new document, and really we're going to create a project first, and then we're going to create a document, and we're going to name the stuff in advance. So the moment I create the project name, I have a folder and the files are being saved, right? But I like to save first because that way it's already saved. I don't have to do it at the end. I always hate this thought of like creating all this code and then going through the process at the end of saving the file. No, that's wrong. You open your editor, first step, save as, and save your thing, right? And I don't care what kind of software you're using. If you're using Word to type up the screenshot document for this class, you're going to do the same thing. File, new, save as, first thing you do before you type anything in that document. And it's a hard habit to get into. And then I also kind of challenge my students, if I forget to do it in class, catch me on it so we correct the behavior, right? Because sometimes I forget to do it too. But you will save yourself a lot of heartache because when you're using Microsoft Word and you forget to save as, guess what? Microsoft Word kicks in and auto saves and always keeps a temporary copy. So you're never really losing your work. Now, welcome to the world of integrated development environments where that does not happen. You worked for 6 hours, forgot to hit save, power bumps, and you lost everything. Bye-bye. Yeah, that's right. Hi, Heather.
Hi.
So when you create something, save as immediately, and that's the process I'm going to follow here. So once again, I'm going to repeat this application. I know this is something we did last week. We're going to work through all the you do it's, and we're going to go all the chapter exercises. So here comes the first you do it exercise. When you launch Eclipse, Eclipse will typically throw up this goofy box up on the screen that basically says, what workspace are you working in? Now, for all of you, this is probably your only Java class. So once you find that folder that you've created with your good file management, you can point to it, and then you can actually check the box and say, use this as the default and don't ask again and click OK. Understanding that you can still switch it from inside Eclipse if you need to. So if you accidentally choose the wrong space, we can get it to the right space. That's not a deal breaker. For me, I'm looking at Java Programming 2. Nope, that's my other class. See, they use Eclipse in that class too. So I'm going to find Java Programming 1, and then my spring semester folder, which is what I chose to do here. And then once I have the folder where I want all my stuff to go into, I'm going to say, okay. So there it is. Java Programming 1, 2022 spring. Why do I lead with the year and not the month or the semester? Because the years will auto sort in the file list too, so it's easier to find stuff. That's kind of the strategy.
So for those of us that are using the school computer,
yeah,
we select
desktop,
whatever.
desktop, document folder. You know, so the question was, if I'm using a school computer, where do I save stuff? And it's like wherever. Just make sure you know where to find it. And so my de facto would be desktop, and that comes from my days as being a Mac person first, as opposed to a Windows person. All right, I'm going to say okay to this screen so we can get on to the next thing. Eclipse is now launching. It takes a moment to load up all its stuff. Usually goes pretty quick.
I don't really have a computer to bring here, so I have a laptop that I don't put anything else on it.
Yeah, you know, Brock, that totally happens. And folks, the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to coach you through this process, but I'm not going to actually complete it. Is when we get into Eclipse, just kind of a really quick refresher, this big center area, this is our coding window. This is where all the code is typed. The bottom area is where we see our error messages, and console output or program output will go down there. The left sidebar is what we call the Package Explorer, which is not exactly files and folders, but it's project resources. And so it's kind of like files and folders. And the first thing we have to do is make sure that we create a new project. If you already have a chapter 1 you do it created, you're good. You don't have to do it again. If you do not, you'll want to come up here to the File menu, choose New, and select Java Project. And then from that screen, right up at the top, give that project a name. And remember, this is also the folder name that you're creating. So name it in a way that makes sense. We are working on the chapter 1 you do it exercises, so it makes a whole lot of sense to say chapter 1 you do it. And yeah, I'm not putting any spaces in there, but you can put spaces in there if you want. I just have this old school habit of never putting spaces and stuff, because in the old days, if you would do that, it would break all your programs. On the project level, it doesn't matter. On the program level, it does. So when we create class files, those cannot have spaces. They have very specific rules. So once you've done that, just go ahead and click finish. Now you notice it's not letting me okay this because the name is already taken, right? And if I add a number to it, then it'll allow it. And then you click finish. Once you click finish, it will add the project stub, is what I call it. It's like the root of your project on the left sidebar in the Package Explorer. And then always notice that little triangle. You can expand that, right? Inside this folder, and this one actually is a folder, the SRC folder, which in what we call Linux speak or Unix speak, SRC stands for source code. It's just an abbreviation that Unix and Linux types have been using for decades on end. And the reason they did that is because it was descriptive and it was short. And so a lot of like little acronyms you see like that, like SRC or BIN or LIB, and you can kind of extrapolate what those mean. And they were just really quick little abbreviations. In the old days, we used to have limitations on how many characters we could put in files and folder names. And this is pretty ridiculous, but we had an 8-character limit for your file and folder names. So you got to get really creative about like describing something with just a few characters. Now we can go up to like hundreds of characters, and people are still not descriptive. But it's just kind of a thing. When I open up that source folder, inside of it, you'll notice this thing called the default package. And for the most part, we're going to leave it like that most of the time. Yes, E. It has like a little X on it, like a little red X on it, okay, well, E, I'm going to take a look at that really quick. Would you mind sharing your screen? So E is working on a Mac. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. We're going to take a really quick look at her screen. Is it? Yeah, and it could be like how you're configured, but I'm thinking that really what it is you might have a package name stuck into a file when you're in the default package, and it will, and if you have any errors in your code, E, those little X's propagate up through the whole structure. So are you okay then? Do you not want to share? Oh, there you go. Okay, thank you. No, that's fine. So let's just take a really quick look at what E has up on her screen here. And it is important to note that she's working on a Macintosh. So you can do this work on a Mac. You can also do this work on any Linux platform as well. Is there anybody here else in the session who uses a Mac as their primary computer? Nobody? All right. All right, so what I'm noticing first, E, is that notice on line 1 of your program, and it right there, right? And it says there's a little red X in the sidebar. Can you hover over the X? It says must declare a named package because this compilation unit is associated to a module name. Okay, so this version of Eclipse is basically trying to force you to use a named package. Now, part of this is, where do you have this saved? So this particular file is not inside the default package folder. So if you look at your left sidebar, and I'm going to see if I can draw on the screen here. Yeah, so if you look at your left sidebar here, this file needs to be placed in that folder, and then that error message will go away. You can drag and drop it, and it should work. And it's not letting you? Or is it letting me? Okay, so so you cannot drag that module file to where hello is? There you go. All right, so okay, so it's trying to do it, but it keeps kicking it out. Can I see your hello Java file? So that one seems okay. And that has no red X's. The module info 2, where did you create that one? Or how did you create it?
It just popped up when I tried to put it.
Oh, I see.
Can I delete it?
Yeah, you can delete it. You can just right click and delete. Totally don't need it. Which probably makes you happy to hear, right?
Now, me starting off with nothing on here. So how let's get this all going.
We're getting there. That's our next step. I just want to solve E's problem here. And E, if that doesn't clear, don't really worry about that too much because we're going to be working on the hello Java file anyhow. So maybe during break, I can come over there and kind of, you know, wave the magic wand or whatever. Yes. All right. So I'll bring my screen back up, you guys. All right. So let's go on to the first step then in creating this. So where you choose to right click now is going to be becomes a thing too. We're going to be putting our work inside the source folder. There's only one package folder inside of it. So I can right click either on top of source or default package. And when I right click, I'm going to choose new and create a class file. And this is really important information. A class file is the basic type of Java program. Right, so whenever you create a Java program, that's like the default type of thing.
So I don't have a source file.
You don't have a source folder?
I wrote a Java chat, like I made the new package, and then I'll go down and PRE system library.
So Brock's pointing out that he doesn't have that SRC folder. So if you don't have the SRC folder, right click on top of the project node or the stub and go to new and create a new class file. And when you do that, you should be able to do that action, correct?
Yes.
Right, and then that will create the source folder. Right. So for those of us that have done it already, it's okay. You know what I mean? No, and if you guys, I want you to get in this habit, at least for this class, is don't name the package file. I also do want to explain why you do name a package file. Sometimes when you write programs, you actually create a whole bunch of small programs that work together to form one larger program. And when you do that, you do want to package them together. So you do want to have a named object that contains them. In this case, because all the programs we will write will be separate programs and won't interact, we don't need to do that. So we leave the package declaration blank. And then it gets called default. All right. In the name area, go ahead and type in the name of the program. Now, I already created hello last week. So this time I'm going to call it hello 2. All right. So go ahead. Hello. If this is your first time, just type hello. If it's your second time, hello 2. You know, practice makes perfect. Yes, Matt.
One of the features we do emphasize the adjective and then hello too.
Oh, it does.
Yeah.
Well, how about hello alt? You know, and I'm putting a dash in there, which is bad. So Matt pointed out that one of the other exercises tells you to call it hello 2. So okay, not a good idea then. Hello alternate is what I'm calling mine. Now I'm going to show you guys a trick that's going to save you a little bit of heartache in the future. That's a great shortcut, right? So the last week when we did this, we typed in manually public static void main. You guys remember that? But there's this little magic switch in Eclipse, right? Right here, this little switch right here, where I can click this little box and it makes it for me automatically. You know what? That's what the professionals do. So why shouldn't you? Yeah, I mean, this is kind of my thing. So you can type it manually, and you know, and that's wonderful. But now it's pre-created. There's no mistypes. It's all automatic. And this is really an important takeaway here too, folks. When professional programmers are using high-end tools, the reason they use high-end tools is to accelerate workflow. Because when you're working out in the field, they not only want you to code well, but they want you to do it quickly, so that they're profitable so they can pay you well, right? So if you're dawdling, typing this out that takes 20 seconds, as opposed to half a second of clicking a switch, you're going to choose the half second of choosing the switch. The other advantage, and this is not a shortcut, is that you do not make a mistake. You're eliminating a mistake by doing that. And that's why I encourage you to use the automatic tools, right? Now you'll notice it put in this auto-generated comment, and we know it's a comment because it's preceded by 2 forward slashes, which is a way of saying, hey, I got 2 forward slashes here. Anything that's after this, please ignore it. It's just information. So I'm gonna put this in. We will talk about comments in a little bit. This is a comment. Please ignore it. Right? Now, why do we have comments? So that we can put information into our programs for other people to look at, or for yourself if you come back to your code and like, what the heck was I doing here? Oh, that's what I was doing here. You leave little notes and information for yourself. Now, we're going to do our same thing we did last time, which is we're going to type this next command, which is system.out.println, which is PRNTLN, and then a set of parentheses and a semicolon. Inside the parentheses, we type double quotes. I typed 1, Eclipse closed it for me. Give me the ending one right away. Put my cursor right in between the 2. And now I'm just going to type something, whatever, hello, again. We did this already, or whatever. Whatever you want to type in there. See? Thanks, Matt. Matt just reminded me what I didn't do. What didn't I do? Did you guys hear him? I didn't save my file. Thank you, Matt. So I'm going to come up to the File menu and choose Save. And I want you to notice as I hover over that menu option, and maybe you guys never look at this stuff in programs, but you notice how on the right side of that menu, it also shows you the shortcut key for it. Right, so many of you already know Control S is Save. But you know what? Save is an easy one. What about well, if I want to close, it's Control W. If I want to create a new something, it's Alt Shift N. And here's kind of another tip. Command shortcut keys are faster than moving your mouse across the screen and right-clicking and all that stuff. That's why they exist. In the old days, man, if you knew your shortcut keys, you could just zoom through things, and other people would go, how'd you do that? Because it looks like magic. All right, so go ahead and save. Thank you, Matt, for reminding me. But this program is already ready to run, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and hit the green play button here. And I do want to kind of make a point. If you made a change to your program, so here, I'll make a change. Right? Added some S's. So now I see the little asterisks up here again, indicating to me it's not saved. The moment I go to run it, Eclipse will throw up this weird box that says Save and Launch. So it's like, don't you want to save this first? Yep, I do. And then if it works, fantastic. We have the output down here, so you can see what I created and that it's all good. Right, and I got the right output. Now, going back to the textbook, and I just kind of want to point this out. So we did these steps. We created the class. Well, Eclipse did it for us. Thank you. Then we created the main method. Eclipse did that for us too. Thank you, Eclipse. All right. And then we typed in our system out print line and our message. Then we went ahead and saved the application and ran it. Now, the way the book proceeds with this is they want to kind of point out the fact that there's problems sometimes when you type code, and it does happen. You forget a semicolon, you forget a character, you're going really fast, and depending on the tool you're using, it can kind of inhibit you a little bit. So for example, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to break my code. So I'm going to, let's say, remove the closing parenthesis. Now, notice what Eclipse does immediately is it underlines red. This is called on-the-fly debugging. That means the engine that checks the code for errors is running even when I'm editing. Whereas if I was using the book approach that the author starts with, which is use a text editor, compile it or try to compile it, and then you get an error message, this is showing me the error message immediately. In fact, if I go to run it, it goes, you got errors. Are you sure you want to do this? It's telling you it's not going to run. And so I'm going to proceed anyhow, because when I do proceed, then you will see down here the same error message that you would receive if you were at a command prompt or a more primitive editor that doesn't have on-the-fly debugging. Now, why do we use on-the-fly debugging? Once again, it accelerates workflow. If I'm seeing red marks in my code, or, and if you'll notice, red mark in the code, red mark in the right sidebar, red mark in the left sidebar, and all of them give me a message if I hover over them. You notice it says syntax error, insert parentheses to complete expression. It tells me how to fix it. It's trying to help me out here. Same message in the left sidebar, and let's see if we get the same message here, same message here. Right? And if you look at this code down here, it also indicates you need this to complete the expression. It also typically will tell you, and this is, I know, hard to read for the people at home, or maybe even in the video, because I could make the console output a little bigger, I guess. But it says down here, exception in thread main, blah, 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 weird Java stuff, unresolved compilation problem, syntax error, insert closing parenthesis to complete expression. And then it tells you where. It says at the name of the file in the main method on line 6. It tells you what line it's on. And you know what? The on-the-fly debugger does that too. So whoever developed Eclipse and tools like this, what they did is they built the compiler into the editor so it runs all the time and is checking your code as you're doing it. Pretty cool stuff.
A lot of places moving forward that direction.
Not only Brock moving towards that direction, been there, done that decades ago. Is really kind of the approach, right?
So most of the coding that we're gonna, let's say, most of the coding we're gonna do already have programs like this, where we
right.
The code, it's gonna correct us on the fly.
Yeah, you're not going to be going to work professionally as a coder and using a primitive text editor, right? Like if you're a carpenter, I guess you can pick up a rock and pound in a nail if you have to, but you can go out to Walmart and buy the $10 hammer, or you can go down to Home Depot and get that $90 hammer, and there's a difference, if you've ever experienced that, and this is what we're talking about. And because this is the professional's tool of choice, that's why we want to get you into this arena immediately. You noticed as I typed my closing parenthesis in the correct spot, how the red underline went away. There are situations here, and I don't know if I can actually simulate one. So now I got rid of the double quote, and now I'm going to hover over it. And in some cases, and this is one of those cases, so I removed the closing double quote. As I hover over the red underline, the message comes up. It says string literal is not properly closed by a double quote. One quick fix available. What's the quick fix? Insert the missing quote. And you can actually go right to that link, click, and it threw it in the wrong spot. Sometimes it fixes it correctly, sometimes not. So that's kind of a lesson that you learn too. I know the double quote should go there. Eclipse put it in the wrong spot. In some cases, though, those quick fixes that it provides are the right answer. And sometimes it's a complicated right answer. And so once again, we use those tools because, it's there, right? And that's what professionals do. Right. So everybody get this to work okay, this first one? We were kind of doing it last week too, so I would assume most of you guys are okay.
Oh, yeah.
All right, thank you, Miguel. All right, let's move on to the next you do it exercise. And, they go through this process of, correcting errors, and then talking about how to compile it from the command line. And I'm not really too worried about the command line. What I would like to do, though, is talk about this technique, because this technique, in my mind, is useful from the standpoint that if you are stuck in an environment where you don't have an IDE and you cannot install one, you can hypothetically do Java work with the most primitive tools. So this you do it, whether you choose to do it or not. If you skip the second you do it, I'm okay with that. If you want to try it, I'm okay with that too. But what I'm going to do is basically show you this command. And really what they do here is they want you to do this. They want you to run a command prompt. And this is kind of a whole deep thing to begin with. So you guys do not have to follow along with this, but I'm going to demonstrate it anyhow. And because I'm actually storing all my stuff on my G drive, I'm switching to my G drive. And then I'm going to my drive, I think it's called. And then I got to change to my 152-184/Java programming 1 folder. And then I forget what my folder was called. Actually, I don't, but I just want to show you that this is how you do it with the command line. And this is really funny, but this is how I was taught. This is how I learned to program. And then we would change into my spring, or is it 2022, spring folder. I forget what folders are inside there, but I got to go into chapter 1, you do it. And then I got to go to the source folder. See how cumbersome this is, right? Just to even get to the right folder. Of course, if you know how to type the whole folder name by heart from the beginning, you can do that. But now that I'm in the source folder, I can see my Java file, right? And from here, I can run the Java compiler. I'm going to make my command prompt window just a little bit bigger so I can type Java C and then type the name of the program, which is hello alt.java. Then I'm running the compiler. And when you do this from the command prompt, and this is pretty interesting, if your program's okay, you run this command and it just gives you the prompt back. It worked. Isn't that interesting? Now, if I do a directory listing, you notice I have a class file here. This is not where Eclipse normally puts them. But now I'm able to go to the next step, which is to actually run this. They're demonstrating how to do the error part. And so what I'm trying to tell you is you don't have to really do that exercise. You guys catching me? And I know some people will do it anyhow, that's fine. Now, after your program is compiled, and that means it has a .class extension, now we can just run the program directly using the command here. So you say Java, tells it what container to run it in, and then the name of the program without the .class after it. So in my case, it would be hello alt, capital H, capital A. So I'm going to say Java, hello, alt, press enter, and there it is. But I did get an error message. Oh, okay. So it's telling me that, okay, so it's compiled somewhere else by a different program. But normally, if you're working from the command prompt, this would just run. And I think that if I went down, it doesn't like to run stuff from the source folder. It likes to run it from the bin folder. So I think if I did the command like this, it works, right? So I went to the binary folder where the compiled files are, and there's my output. You can see it right there on the screen. Okay, so you can see why this is kind of a cumbersome way to do it. Like, so if you use like Notepad++, compiled at the command line, ran it from the command line, you can do it, right, in a pinch. And sometimes, you get into situations, and I say this to people who might be future server admins, where you have a piece of server running on a software, you make a change to the code, you don't have an IDE available because you only have a prompt, being able to get it into a text editor, recompile the program, and run it again, and do it all from the command prompt, that can be a really valuable skill. But usually it's server admins doing that. Most real programmers are working at the IDE level because it's better. right? But knowing how to do this is kind of a nice auxiliary skill, frankly, right? I don't like the fact that the book starts here, but that's where it starts, so hey. All right. Now, once we have a program in place, it's easy to take that program and start adding stuff to it. So if you get it to run, hey, I got a message on the screen. That's really cool. Now you can start adding more stuff to it. So let's kind of work up to that. So I'm kind of skipping ahead only to the you do it exercises, you guys. And actually they're talking about comments here. So this is part of the next you do it. So let's get to that. All right, so this next little exercise that they do is going to demonstrate commenting and doing graphical output. So this one I consider an important exercise to do. First thing that we're going to do is we're going to jump over to Eclipse, and then I'm going to right click, and I can right click anywhere here. So you do it, source, or default package. Any one of those spots will work, right? This time I'll right click on the default package. I will say new class file. Now, I want to know what he wants us to name it. So I'm going back to the book and I'm going to go all the way to the bottom. And it looks like he's calling it hello dialogue. So that's what I'm calling it. So here in the name, I'm typing hello dialogue. The package declaration is left blank. I know that I'm going to need public static void main, so I'm going to check the box, may as well. Then we click finish, and there's our new program ready to go. Meanwhile, back in the book, and maybe I'm at the point here where I need to start split screening a little bit, so I apologize if this messes with your heads a little bit. So I really, what I want to do is look at the code in the book at the same time. You know, it's kind of my goal here. But they're asking us to do this. Open a new file in your text editor, type comments similar to the following, inserting your own name and today's date where directed. Now, some schools that you go to, and I'll tell you what, I was taught this way when I first learned how to code, is I had a teacher, you know, probably shouldn't name him, but he always said, if you don't put your name at the top of your homework in comments, you don't get any points. Which I was like, that's kind of ridiculous, you know. But that was his rule. And so one way you can type a comment in a programming number is to do a double slash, and then anything that follows that double slash, these are forward slashes, by the way, on the question mark key, becomes a comment. So if you want, you could follow what the author is doing over here, where he says, you know, file name, hello dialogue.java. Another comment, your name. Another comment. Oops. Today's date. What is today? The 1st, the 2nd, 1st? 2/1/22. So tomorrow's going to be 2222. Or 222022. But and I'm overthinking it. But notice how it also changes colors, you know. So whenever we see that color, we know it's a comment. The other thing that they're going to have us add here is this really cryptic little statement. So this is the first time we're doing what we call an import statement. So I'm going to type that. Import statements will always be listed above your class declaration. So this is where really the program starts, but the import statements have to start above. So I'm just going to type in all lowercase, import, and then I'm going to copy what I see on the right side of the screen. Java X dot swing dot J option pane, capital J, capital O, capital P, and then a semicolon. And so the long and short of what's happening here is this. When we want to extend the capabilities of Java, we sometimes import other libraries of Java functions. And so there's a library out there that's pre-created that creates graphical user interface components without us needing to code them. We just call the library in, refer to it by name, and it just happens. And this is kind of beautiful, actually, because this gives you the capability to significantly extend the capabilities of Java using select libraries of pre-built functions to perform really powerful tasks. In fact, what happens in the long run is you start to create your own libraries of functions that you can then import into your own programs. And so that becomes kind of interesting. And this is really kind of the power of Java, is this capability to pull in pre-created code to kind of accelerate workflow once again. So what we're pulling in here, it comes from the Java graphical libraries. Swing is one type of GUI interface that Java allows you to code in. And we're going to pull in a dialog box, which in this framework they call J option pane. I don't know why, but that's what it is. Okay. Next, we will move on to this instruction here. And I'm going to see if I can collapse that so it gets a little bigger. And inside of our main method, we're going to type this text verbatim, right? Because that's the syntax for doing a dialog box. So I'm going to type J option pane dot show message dialog, right? Now you'll notice that Eclipse is doing something weird here as I'm typing. And what it's doing is it's doing what we call intellisense. It's anticipating what thing I'm about to type and starts narrowing down the list as I go until I get to the one I want. And I'm assuming that the first one is the one I want. And then here, we will type in the rest of the command. So you see one of the options, so I have to type null. One of the options is, hey, null. All right, great. I don't know what that means exactly, but there it is. And then we're going to put in our message. And so here, inside of double quotes, we're going to say, hey, hello, or whatever, you know, something like that. And then we're going to close our parentheses. And what you guys can't see here is the parentheses are actually already closed. Right? They're just a little bit off screen. So there's our message. All right. Then they basically what they have us do is they compile it and they run it. And we're going to do that inside of Eclipse. So we don't have to type these two commands. Eclipse does the work for us. So the first thing we'll do is we'll hit the save button. This time I'm using the icon. And now I'm hitting the run button. And there's our first graphical program, you guys. Woo! Right? That is so exciting. It really is. And you know what? It works like other graphical programs. So you can grab the window and move it around. I can click the OK button to make it go away, or the red X to make it go away, either one. If I want to get like kind of snarky with it, I can come up with really creative messages like click OK or the red X to reformat your hard drive. Right, not something we're really doing, but that's like a little IT humor, right? And so I'm going to hit the run button, save, and run. And now I get this message, which totally doesn't do what it says, but it looks like it does what it says, which kind of gives you a little bit of food for thought when you're operating other programs, right? Does it really do what it says it does? I'm not sure. Hopefully. But then you can play with those buttons. You can run it a few times, do whatever you want with it. But for as primitive as that is an output mechanism that we can use in our programs. Now, they demonstrate this pretty early on, but then we really don't touch GUI programming, frankly, until we get to the Java 2 class. And I just want to let you guys know that in advance. And that's really kind of, kind of a deeper level of study, because when you start dealing with graphical components, you have to start thinking in a different way, frankly. You have to start thinking about your screen size and shape. What kind of stuff are you putting on the screen? Do you want buttons or text boxes or sliders or images or videos, or what is it you're putting on the screen? You guys are still learning the fundamentals of programming, but here's your first, albeit primitive, example of creating graphical components. And what's fascinating about this is you did not have to go through the laborious process of writing the code to create the window. You just used the window and put your words into it, right? So, and this is, one of my favorite stories from like when I learned. When I first wrote a GUI program, I had to write the code to write the window first, and then write the code to work inside the window. Oh my God, it was like so much work, and it was hideous looking. It wasn't even good, you know? But that's how we did it back then. That was the only way to do it. You had to write the code for the window and then write the code for the output. And it was later on that people got smart. And it's like, well, if that's the code for the window, why recreate it? We just use, why don't we just call it in and use it? And that's what we're doing. You know?
It's just maybe a really bad idea for.
And so so I'm going to repeat this because I had the recording paused. Well, this last little part of the chapter talks about how to get more information about the Java code that you're learning. And they have a little link here that takes you to the Oracle website. Now, I just want to remind you guys that Oracle is a big IT corporation from California whose big product is really databases, and they've bought up a lot of other stuff, including Java. And because they own it, they also kind of have this kind of responsibility to publish all the information that's relative to this. And really what they're trying to get you to do is learn how to learn more about the code you're typing. And the old-fashioned way is you go to their website and then you look up in their documentation, basically, what is the meaning of this command? And how do you use it? And what are the parameters? And what's, you know, do I need import statements or whatever? And they call this information Java docs. And here's kind of the interesting thing. If you jump back to the book, and I'm going to do that, you know, so they have you go here and they have you download the summary of all the Java APIs. APIs are application programming interfaces, and then you can read about each command to your heart's content. But here's the reality. Nobody does this. And I'll tell you why, right? So the book is coaching you to go to the website just in case you need this info. But if you're using a high-end tool, here's the advantage of Eclipse one more time. Notice that I have a program already on screen, and there's like these pre-built commands like J option pane. You guys notice as I just hovered my mouse over J option pane, I get a yellow pop-up box. And guess what this is? This is the exact information that's on Oracle's website. If you go to the trouble of downloading that, looking through that, finding J option pane, opening it up and reading the entry for it, this is the exact information from that download. So what they've done in Eclipse, IntelliJ does this too, Visual Studio does this also, is as you hover over a command, it recognizes it, connects over to Oracle, pulls down the Java doc, puts it up on the screen for you. You don't have to go anywhere to find it. So if you can do this, this would be accomplishing for me the fact that you're doing that, you do it exercise, that you can find this. Now to take it one step further, if you look really closely at the bottom right corner of that yellow box, it says press F2 for focus. So I'm going to do it, F2, all right? And then it kind of put it in a window. You guys notice that? So now I can scroll and move around. But if you notice in the bottom here, there's also this little button all the way to the right. As I hover over it, it says open, oops, I want to do this here, open attached Java doc in a browser. So if I click that, now you're thinking it's going to open Chrome. Well, here's a little thing. Good IDEs like Eclipse have a web browser built in, folks. So this is actually a web page that it's loading. And now it's telling me everything about that command, how to use it, all the little aspects of it that I'd ever want to know, to the point of like insanity almost. You know, it's like so much detail, it's kind of crazy, right? For every command in Java, you can pull up the direct information from Oracle directly within Eclipse. And this information is known as Java docs. Now here's the why we use this. Sometimes you're using some commands and you're like, oh yeah, that command gives you the window. But what if I wanted to make the window so there was no red X in the corner, right? Somewhere in this Java doc, it tells you how to do that. And so this helps you author your code, because there's always going to be nuances. And the trick is, folks, nobody memorizes this stuff. And I'm saying this for everybody. Nobody memorizes this stuff. Some stuff, yeah, of course. But when things get complex, how can you possibly memorize like the 10 million commands that are available in Java. You cannot do it. So what you need is not memorization, but strategy for finding the information when you need it. Kind of like, hey, you know, how do I fix my car? You go to Google and you look it up, right? And you just do it, right? And that's the same thing here. So the Java docs really are kind of like Googling how you use a command on the fly within the tool that you're using. It's available on spot as you're using it. And so that, for me, if you can get like to those screens and you can screenshot those along the way, that will basically accomplish the goal. Now, I did talk screenshot, and so here's kind of my anatomy of what I'm going to do here for the you do it. This is the last you do it. And what I'd like to do is show you what I'm kind of expecting for this first you do it exercise, which, by the way, I'm super like flexible and lenient on grading for this one because I'm kind of changing formats midstream, basically. So you do want to create a blank document. Remember, you can use Google Docs if that's better for you. And let's title it Chapter 1 You Do It Exercises. Maybe my name. And then you want to make those bold or big, that's fine too. And then some people will do this, you know, they'll say, you do it on this page, or you do it with the name of the program, whatever it is that works for you. I pretty much know the exercises, so you don't have to get like super perfect about naming them. But let's just call this, you know, I don't know, what was it, page 20 or something, right? You do it, page 20. And this one was called hello.java. So for that particular program, and I'm kind of doing one thing backwards. What I would prefer that you really do is as you do each exercise, that's when you should screenshot. You know, don't do like 10 exercises and then go back and do the screenshots. I mean, you could, but to me, it makes more sense to do it as you're doing it. So here's my first program, right? Hello Java. So I'm double clicking to make it active. And the first thing I ask is a screenshot of the code and a screenshot of the program running. And ideally, those will be two separate screenshots, not one, right? So I don't want you doing like the print screen thing where you hit print screen and grab the whole screen, because it gets really hard to read those. And so instead, we will use what we call the snipping tool. And there's two versions of this tool. Now, I know last week I demonstrated the old school tool, which is fine. They both work the same, they just have a different face on them. But now in Windows 10 and above, they have this tool called Snip and Sketch. So let's use that, you know. I know some of you might be on Windows 11. If you're on a Mac, your tool is called Grab, G-R-A-B. If you're doing screenshots, and most Mac users know that. So now that we're here, I want to make sure that in the background I have exactly what I want to capture already on screen, and I do. So I'm going to go ahead and click New, and then it grays out your screen, and then I'm going to take my crosshairs here, put it where I want to start. Usually I go top left corner, and then I click and drag, highlight all the stuff I want to show, and you see how tight I'm coming in on it? I don't need to show anything else. That's my code. I don't need to show I don't need to do this, right? This is good, right? Once I have it there, the program pulls it up, and then in the toolbar, there's this icon that looks like two pieces of paper on top of each other. You just click that, that's the copy button, or you can just do Control-C, right? You know that trick. And then I will switch over to my document editor, and I will paste it in position. That is a nice screenshot because it is huge. You know, this old guy here is not going to have a problem reading that. And how do I know that? Well, here's one tip, right? If your screenshot text is smaller than the regular font in your word processor, that's going to be hard to read. So for example, if your screenshot looks like this, right? That's hard for me to read. What's the comparison? I look at the regular font. If the regular font is a certain size, the font inside the screenshot should be, you know, about the same size, right? And if they're about the same size, you can rest assured that I can see it pretty easily. The next thing I'm going to do is I also need a picture or a screenshot of the code running. So I'm going to press enter, move the cursor down to the next line. I'm going to go back to Eclipse. I'm going to hit the run button. It successfully ran down here. So once again, I'm going to bring up the snip and sketch or the snipping tool, either one. Click new. And this time I'm looking for the console output. I just need, like that. Basically, that's all I need. It's tiny, tiny, tiny. Once again, I'm going to copy it. Go back to my word processor, paste, and there's my code running. And then what I normally ask is, can you tell me about your experience? For some people it'll be like, and hopefully your whole semester is like this. This was really easy. I love Java, right? I am being a little facetious here. Or more realistically, this was really hard. I got stuck on, whatever you got stuck on. Or if it's not working, help, this is not working. And really, if that's the case, make it bold, make it red. And if that's really the case, you should probably be emailing me or coming to office hours, so I can help you with it, or go visit with the tutor and let's figure out why. There will be some situations that people run into when you're coding, where pretty commonly it's like, oh man, I just couldn't get it to work. And here's the beauty of coding. Sometimes the fix is like just one little character, semicolons in the wrong place, parentheses in the wrong place, you mistyped one letter, and that's all it takes to break it. So it doesn't mean you're dumb, it just means you didn't see it, right? But we have all these tools, and you get used to using the tools to help you fix things, and then hopefully by the time you get to the end of the course, you'll be a little more comfortable with that process. I know some of you are both in this Java class and you're in my Python class also, and you're going to see correlations. Python is a little bit more user-friendly on the front end. Java, I think it becomes more user-friendly in the long haul, the more complicated it gets. All right, so that's an example of the screenshot. When it comes time to turn this in, save your document. And so I'm going to save this. And you can put it wherever you want. But normally I would probably put this in the same folder where you're storing your other stuff. So I would go, for me, it would be my, my G drive, my drive, wherever Java 1 is, there it is, 2022 Spring. And you could put it into the same folder with the code, but I'm going to recommend that you do not do that, by the way, that you put it above the folder, like here. All right, now it's time to turn in the work, but if you read the instructions, all the instructions for all the programming exercises are basically the same. It's like write the code, screenshot the code and the program running, zip your folder, and submit both the screenshot document and the zip file. Do not, please, do not zip the screenshot document. Submit that separately, and I'll show you that procedure right now, then we will take a break, folks. All right, so here I am in the core shell in the Unit 1 folder, and I'm about to turn in the You Do It exercises, assuming all my screenshots are in there and my code is zipped. But you know what? I just thought to myself, you know what? I didn't zip my code. And so for some of you, maybe this is a new thing, right? So a lot of people know how to open zip files, never even gave a second thought about how to create one. Here's kind of an interesting piece of computer history, and I was like sharing this. Zip files were invented here in Wisconsin, in Brown Deer, Wisconsin, right? On the north side of the Milwaukee County. A company that is still in business, by the way, called PK Ware, that is now in the third ward of Milwaukee, and it still operates. But they invented the zip file format, I don't know, like 40, 50 years ago. And the whole point of a zip file is that you can take a bunch of files, put them all together into one file, and it makes it a little bit smaller than what it would normally be by using some really clever techniques. Like, for example, in a document, if you have like pages of white space, it removes it, right? And so it kind of condenses it all down. E, you have a question.
Yeah. Should we skip the bin or the SDR?
Great question. What you do is you you zip the whole folder. So what E just asked is this, right? So once you find where your project is located, and you should know where it's located, why? Because you organized your files, right? So for me, if you remember, it's here. And now what E's question is, should I like zip the source folder? Should I zip the bin folder? And the answer is neither one of those. You go up one folder level to here and give me the whole folder. And so if you right click that, and then in Windows, you do send to compressed zipped folder, it will auto populate the name based on the name of the folder. And okay, that looks good to me. I press enter, and I have my zip file. Okay. On a Mac, it's a right click or control click to do the same thing, but you do it from that level. And then now it's time to turn in the homework. And notice how nicely this works out. I have my document and my zip file are right there. So when I am in Blackboard, to turn in any homework, you click the assignment title, checking the due date. Hey, I still have until Friday. Yeah, so that's kind of a nice little gift. And now I'm going to attach my files. While you have your file folder open, my favorite way to do this, and I think I showed it last week, is I first grab the document, drag it over. There it is attached. Go back to the folder, and then I attach my zip file, and there it is attached. The moment I hit submit, that gets uploaded to Blackboard. Please keep in mind, as your programs and your documents get bigger, sometimes that upload takes a little while. So if you have like a 10-page screenshot document with tons of photographs in it, and a program that's like 10 or 20 megabytes, you got to wait for that to upload. So be patient when you hit submit. Early on, that won't be much of a problem. So I'm going to hit submit, and then it will get sent to the server. If you want to add some comments, you can do so here in the box, or you can use this thing up here. It says write submission and type your comments there. Either one of those is fine. And so, some people will do this. I hope I turned this in correctly, especially at the beginning. And that's fine. Whatever it takes. You want to give me a little message.
That's what I said when I sent my work
You know what, Miguel? And that's totally fine. And I do read the comments, so in some cases when I'm grading the homework, I will also respond with comments. And so let's say you submit your homework, and then how do you see your grade? Well, first thing you should know is the moment you submit, it will not be graded. I have to look at it to grade it, right? So I see it on my end in Blackboard, and then as it comes up on screen, I look first at the screenshots. If I see if there's any issues, I open up the code and I try the code. If you did it on time, did it all correctly, you probably have all your points. If it's a little bit late, not done correctly, you start losing some of your points. To see your grade, you go to this menu entry, My Grades, and then each assignment will be listed here. And you'll notice that there's these little point values. And so, like for this chapter, when you do it, it's a 2-point assignment. And so maybe you'll get 2 points out of 2. Or maybe you didn't do something quite right, you forgot something, or you didn't screenshot right, or whatever. I might have a little comment. If there's a comment, then you get a little like comment bubble that pops up here. Make sure you read those. Especially if you don't have all your points. If you have all your points, it's kind of like, whatever. But if you don't, and it's like you only have half the points, like, why don't we only have half the points? All right, let's check it out. So you read the comments, and then I will give you very specific instructions like, hey, you didn't do this thing right, fix it, turn it in again, and I'll give you the rest of the points. That's kind of my pattern. And those of you that have had me before know that. And so I always say, when you see a comment bubble, make sure that you read them. Folks, let's take a 5-minute break. We're going to come back and work on the exercises. We should be able to plow through all of them, by the way, before we leave here. I know it'll probably be close to 10 o'clock, but we should be able to finish them. 5-minute break, it's 9:10, we'll come back.
Mr. Tack, I got a question.
Sure.
So when you upload the folder for your code, and you have how you have the Java and the Hello World 2, does all that get zipped in?
Yeah, and Miguel, the trick to that really is to find the folder where all your work is and zip the whole folder.
Okay.
So like don't like go in here find the code, and then zip this.
Right.
That's not what you want to do. You want to go up to the, one level above where your work is. There you can right click and it zips everything. So it zips the working version of the program, it zips the code, it zips the whole darn thing. And why I need the whole darn thing is if I try to run it, I need all of those pieces to try to run it.
And for future exercises, like since we're still in exercise 1 and we got to do 6 through 11, do we still zip the same folder?
Right, and you know what? That's a really good question. So when we come back to do the chapter 1 exercises, we're going to create a new project in Eclipse, which creates a new folder. When we finish all the exercises, like 6 through 11 or whatever that was, we will zip that whole folder when we're done.
Okay, gotcha.
All right, I'll see you guys in 5, 3. It's actually 3 minutes now, but all right. So 9:15-ish. Is it working?
Where did it, they have it to open it up?
You know what? Here, I forgot to.